Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome into this week's editions of my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses for week 5. We are officially in bye season, so there are 4 teams on a bye, so you guys might be looking for some help off the waivers, and hopefully I got some names out here for you that you can pluck from. Now, with that being said, there are a couple repeat names on here because we haven't got them above that 50% threshold. So, as a reminder, or just in case we have any first time listeners, these players I am about to speak about, they have to have at least 50% roster availability on Yahoo leagues. So, there is a good chance that these guys are out there for you to go pluck off the waivers and possibly play this week if you need some help on the bye weeks, or at least bolster your bench with more bye weeks that are going to come up over these next, 6 to 7 weeks. With that being said, as always, I'm gonna give you guys my top quarterback out of the week, and I don't know why, guys. He's the third week in a row I'll be talking about him, so I'm not going to spend too much time on him. But it's C.J. Stroud, guys. He's still available in over 50% of the leagues right now. He's actually available in 53% of the leagues. He had this past weekend. He had 306 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran the ball 4 times for 16 yards, and that was against that Steelers defense. Obviously, it's not the Steelers defense of old, but with them going against like a T.J. Watt, and an Alex Highsmith with a banged up offensive line, and he was still able to put up those numbers. That's really impressive. I know he has the second most passing yards by a rookie quarterback in his first 4 games. Well, the only quarterback to throw more than him in the first 4 games was Cam Newton. And then when you look at the total season, he actually has the 4th most passing yards right now. And what's awesome, what he's doing right now too, which it doesn't really affect your fantasy outcome if he throws a pick. What you lose like a point or 2 depending on your league settings, but he has thrown 0 interceptions in the first 4 games. Now this weekend they are going against the Atlanta Falcons. I am starting to look at the points per game average. This is when I really think at the point of the year we can actually factor in that and what you're going to do, but just so you guys are aware, the Falcons defense is giving up 15.6 points per game to the quarterback position this year so far. That's the 17th most allowed, so right in the middle, but I still think he's definitely worth a play this week, especially if you have like maybe a Justin Herbert who's on a bye. Moving into my running back out of the week, I'm gonna go with Tajay Spears. The rookie running back, the backup running back for the Tennessee Titans. He's available in 76% of leagues right now. Now, this past weekend, he had 5 rushes for 40 yards, 3 receptions for 18 yards on 4 targets. Now, he's not at this point where you're going to pick him off the waivers and play him, but he's a guy where he's a premium handcuff, in my opinion, because if Derrick Henry goes down, all of a sudden you got an RB2 that could potentially give you an RB1 value, because if you look at what he's doing with his touches, he's been very efficient. I mean, he had 40 yards on 5 rushing attempts. So, and then he's been able to do that all throughout the first 4 games. So he's a premium handcuff. If you are a Derrick Henry manager, and if he's out there on the waivers, you better go get him. And he's just a guy that I think where you look at this Tennessee Titans offense. Yes, they have DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks as well, but we saw Treylon Burks miss this past game. DeAndre Hopkins has his history of injuries, so they're going to have to develop a role for this kid as the season goes along, and I think he's going to start to see more touches even if Henry stays healthy. The last thing you want to do, right, is remember Devin Achane. Everybody kind of gave up on him in the first couple of weeks, dropped on the waivers, and he blows up, and all of a sudden you have to spend all your fab money. You have to compete for him to get on your roster. You're not going to want to have that happen to you for Spears. And again, like I said, especially if you are a Derrick Henry manager. Now this weekend they are going against the Colts. The Colts do allow 17.6 points per game to the running back position. That is the 11th most allowed. But honestly, until we see a larger rollout of him, I don't trust him in my lineups quite yet, but he should be stashed on benches going forward. My wide receiver ad of the week, I'm going to go with that rookie wide receiver in Arizona, Michael Wilson. He's available in 98% of the leagues. This past weekend, he had his best performance so far through the first 4 games. He had 7 receptions for 76 yards, 2 touchdowns on 7 targets. This was his first game over 5 targets, but even though he just got over 5 targets for the first time, The last 3 games, he's averaging 72.6 yards per game. So he's getting more acclimated into that offensive system. And what I really like about it too is, yes, these Cardinals are a lot better than what most people thought they would be this year. But at the end of the day, they still lack that overall talent. So I see a lot of games where Arizona's going to have to play catch up and pass the ball often, which is going to funnel that volume of opportunity for Michael Wilson to produce going forward. Now this weekend they got a solid matchup. They are going against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are allowing 21 points per game to wide receivers in fantasy right now. That is the 17th most allowed, right around the middle. But still though, this is a kid that definitely should be on your bench. And if his role continues to grow over these next few weeks, you're talking about a guy that's going to slide into that wide receiver 3, maybe low end wide receiver 2 territory going forward. Moving into the tight end position, sticking with the same team and sticking with a name that I mentioned to before. I mentioned to him in the first 2 weeks. I mentioned that I think he would be worthy of an ad, especially at a tight end position that struggles to have any type of consistency. I mean, there's a lot of high end tight ends that are very underproducing through the first month of the season. But going back, Zach Ertz, he's still available over 50% of the leagues. He's actually available in 74% of the leagues right now. This past weekend, he had 6 receptions for 53 yards on 10 targets, especially in those PPR leagues. I think Ertz is making out to be a phenomenal tight end at this point with how many times he's getting targeted. He has, through the first 4 games, he has 2 games where he's been targeted 10 times. In 3 of the 4 games, he's been targeted at least 8 times. And in those games, he's gotten targets at least 8 times. He's gotten at least 3 6 reception games. So PPR leagues, that's definitely great. And then he's got a great matchup this weekend against those Bengals. The Bengals are allowing 10 points per game to tight ends this season. That is the 3rd most allowed. So if you're looking for tight end help this week, you're looking for a tight end to stream, I definitely think Ertz should be in your radar when you look at the waivers. Moving into my flex ad of the week, I'm going to go with Terrace Marshall Jr. He's available in 100% of the leagues. He is a year 3 wide receiver, which if you guys are new listeners, I do a yearly year 3 wide receiver guys that I'm keeping on my radar. And he was a guy I mentioned to watch as how his role would develop over the preseason, but he got hurt in the preseason, which kind of derailed him. But he's kind of gotten it going over the last 2 weeks. So this past Sunday, Terrace Marshall had 9 receptions for 56 yards on 10 total targets. Over the last 2 games, he's gotten 18 targets in these last 2 weeks. Now this weekend, the Panthers are going against the Lions. The Lions are allowing 21.1 points per game to wide receivers. That's the 16th most in the league. Now I kind of view him like Michael Wilson, right? Like you don't necessarily want to pick him up off the waivers and immediately insert him in your lineup unless you have like a bunch of wide receivers on a bye. But I think he's definitely worth a stash on your bench, especially if you need some wide receiver depth, especially if you're trying to plan ahead until bye weeks. And if he starts to see this consistent targets where he's, like I said, he's averaging 9 targets a game over the last 2 weeks. So if he's seeing those like 7 to 10 targets a game over these next 2 to 3 weeks, he's a guy that's going to slide into that wide receiver 3 territory. We will kind of need to see more out of the passing attack where I would feel comfortable labeling him as a low-end wide receiver 2. But if he's going to at least see the volume of targets, he's going to start being considering as a worthy of a play every week. Those are my top waiver wire targets. And then moving into my top streamable defenses for week 5, just like the players, these defenses had to have at least 50% roster availability on Yahoo. And my number 1 defense, this is a Thursday night game, so you want to make sure you get them off the waivers and get them into your lineup. But it's going to be the Washington Commanders against the Bears. I even threw the Broncos out there last week. It was looking terrible at one point, the Broncos suggestion I did. But guess what? Justin Fields fumbled that ball. There was a fumble recovery for a touchdown, and it was worth it. And that's why it's always worth sometimes rolling a gamble of playing a bad defense, right, against a very a bad struggling offense. But the Commanders' defense, they got some playmakers, especially on the defensive front. I mean, they have 4 first-rounders on that defensive front, and so I think they are going to be able to tear apart that very bad Bears offensive line, where they're going to be able to get after Justin to get those sacks and potentially force those turnovers. And what I like about the Commanders too is not only for this week, Next week, they're going against the Falcons, so we're going to have to see where this Falcons offense is going underneath Desmond Ritter. I'm going to talk about that soon. And then the following week, they got the New York Giants. So you got like 3 weeks that you could possibly play the Commanders defense, so that's why they're my number one streaming defense for week 5. My number 2 streaming defense, I'm going to go with the Dolphins against the Giants. The Dolphins are available in 51% of the leagues right now. And that's strictly because we saw what happened last night on Monday night. The Seattle Seahawks were able to sack Daniel Jones 10 times. Now, I'm sure that offensive line will get better when Andrew Thomas is in there, but that whole offense is a complete mess right now. I don't know what's going on with New York. They have looked completely different than they did last year. Dolphins got some guys up front. They got Jalen Phillips. They got Bradley Chubb, Christian Wilkins up front, and they got a guy like Xavier Howard in the back end that can get those interceptions and potentially return it for a touchdown like Devin Witherspoon did last week. And what I do also like about the Dolphins is next week they got the Carolina Panthers. So could be 2 straight weeks of a streaming defense that you could pick up and you don't have to worry about the following week. Moving into my number 3 streaming defense, I am going to go with the Lions against the Panthers. The Lions are available in 86% of the leagues right now, and it's strictly because they are going against that struggling Panthers offense. That Panthers offensive line, really rough right now, and we saw what the Lions defensive front was able to do against that banged up Packers offensive line last week. So I expect guys like Aiden Hutchinson to be able to continue that success and get that pressure on Bryce Young. And we kind of saw it last week when Bryce Young was under pressure. He had that one fumble that turned into a touchdown. So there's those scenarios, and anytime you go against a rookie quarterback, there's always the potential of those picks that he could throw. So I definitely think the Lions are definitely worthy of a streaming defense in week 5. My number 4 streaming defense, I'm going to go with the Packers against the Raiders. The Packers are available in 74% of the leagues. Now, it does sound like Jair Alexander is going to be back, which would be huge for that Packers defense. They were missing him last week. And then they're just going to be going against the Raiders offense. Again, it's a struggling offense. Jimmy G is still in concussion protocol, so we'll have to see what's going to happen with that. But even if Jimmy G still plays, I still think the Packers are worthy of a streaming defense. I mean, look what happened with that Raiders offensive line. It's not that great. Khalil Mack had 6 sacks by himself. But I will say this, if it is Aiden O'Connell, that bumps him up a little more, because that kid did make some mistakes. He threw that interception at the end of the game. So if you do miss out on those top 3 defenses, I definitely would consider picking up the Packers this week. My number 5 streaming defense, I'm going to go with the Texans against the Falcons for a couple reasons. First of all, the Falcons are available in 96% of the leagues right now. You miss out on those top 4 defenses I talked about. The reason why I'm comfortable with the Texans is, yeah, they might not have a lot of talent right now, but they've been playing really good football over the last 2 weeks. And then they're going against a Falcons offense where it's like, yeah, the Falcons got these playmakers, right? They got Bijan, they got Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith. But yeah, Desmond Ritter, let's just be honest, he has not delivered where they wanted him to. He can throw those picks. He could throw a pick 6 like we saw him do in London against the Jaguars last week. So it's strictly because of the quarterback matchup. Like I said too, though, that Texans defense is playing really good over the last couple weeks. So if they can continue that success, and then if Ritter is not able to step up and be a better quarterback this weekend, I think there's some interception opportunities for Houston's defense. So yeah, guys, that is my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses for week 5. As always, if there's any players on the waivers, or if there's any defenses you're thinking about streaming, feel free to get in the comment section or slide into my DMs, and I'll try to get back to you any of your questions as soon as possible. As always, though, you'll get my start sit video tomorrow night. I'm gonna head out, get this video up there for you guys. Peace out, and enjoy your day, night, evening, whenever you're watching this.